Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who don't identify as either, you are listening to Ratchet and Respectable with Demetria L. Lucas. Look, I wish y'all could see me right now. It's a good thing I don't do this podcast on video. Never doubt my commitment to this podcast. I have built a blanket fort on an air mattress in order to record this podcast. Yesterday, the movers came and took all of my stuff. My worldly possessions are on a truck bound for Maryland as we speak. I knew I had to do the podcast today, so I kept all my equipment. And I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll just record in the morning. No worries. Totally forgot that I live in a loft with these high ceilings and these concrete floors. I sat down to record. It just sounded like one big echo, sound just bouncing all over the place. It sounded like trash. I was like, oh my God, I can't do the podcast. So the blanket that I slept with last night, sans pillow, because I forgot to keep a pillow, I have that blanket over my head to record this podcast episode. That's love. Don't ever doubt me. I have a very weird reaction to like all my stuff. I'm thinking it's about the stuff. I didn't feel it until the stuff was gone. But sitting up in like an empty apartment, an empty loft, in general, like I spend a lot of time by myself and it never bothers me. I prefer to be alone a lot of the time. Occupational hazard as a writer, like you need to be alone a lot of the time. Podcast, same thing. Having people around, making noise in the background doesn't really work for work. But just in general, I like myself. I like spending time with myself. I have no issues being alone. But for the first time in a really long time, like yesterday, like after they took all my stuff and I was just in here, I felt lonely. And I don't usually feel that way. It's a very uncomfortable feeling for me. So I sat in it for all of like 5 minutes and then I ordered Prosecco because I was like, oh no. It's one of those like what hurts worse, the pain or the hangover. I don't have a hangover. It's just Prosecco. But I did drink a significant amount of it. But I was like, ooh. Some days I can just sit in my discomfort and other days I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Anybody trying to think about all that right now? I had an excellent birthday weekend. Thank you so much for everyone who sent birthday wishes and greetings and blessings and prayers and songs and DMs and texts and emails and WhatsApps. A bunch of people don't know where I am, so they just WhatsApp me because that's safe. You know that's going to reach me wherever I am in the world. But in LA, for now, my last day in LA is Friday, which is weird. We've talked about my experience in LA, and a good chunk of it was COVID. I don't know that LA got like a really fair shot from me. Just hanging out over the weekend and actually, you know, being in LA with it really being open and people milling about, which it's an entirely different experience than it's been for the last 2 years or so for obvious reasons. But it feels like, oh, this is the LA that I was supposed to experience. So even though we talked about how like LA has never been a 10 for me, it was also LA during COVID. I was only here for 10, 11 months before COVID hit. I was just getting my footing and it was good. Like right before COVID hit, like I was out and about and I was being mixy and having a great time. So even when I'm driving around LA, like I don't know that I'm done with this city yet. I'm not putting a timeline on how long I'll be in Ghana. It could be 6 months. It could be a year. It could be 2 years. I have a couple friends who've moved to various countries overseas and they said they were only going for 6 months or a year and then ended up being there for like 7, 8, 10. Some of them still there. So we'll see. I'm just going to let life play out as it is. But if I do come back to the States, LA is not completely ruled out for me. There's still some things I would like to do and places I would like to see that I haven't done yet. I guess I could just see them as a tourist. I don't know. We'll see how life unfolds. But I had an amazing birthday weekend. I told you him came out to celebrate my birthday. Or maybe I told you it was a visitor. I said it was a visitor and then a couple people asked me and they were like, is it him? It was him. But he came out to celebrate my birthday and we had an amazing weekend. I do this thing with him that I do with one other person in the world, my dad. And I haven't done it in years. But on Saturday morning, we were headed out and I had my phone. My apartment was full of boxes and there was stuff all over the place. So I was trying to like find my purse and he was like, what you need your purse for? I was like, I'm just going to go outside with like no ID, no money, no card. No, what? You sound crazy. And he was like, you with me? What you need that for? He was like, come on. Are you crazy? Come on. Okay. I used to do it with him all the time in my 20s, which was insane. I'd be walking around New York City with a phone, a Metro card, and him. He wanted to see my neighborhood, so we went on a walk. And we got coffee, and then we got breakfast. We're out for like a good 2 hours and my nails look like trash because, moving, packing. And I wanted to get my nails done. And there was a really cute shop that I'd heard about but hadn't been. And we passed right by it. And I was like, oh, see, this is why I should have brought my purse because I would just get my nails done and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, so get your nails done. I was like, I need to go home and get money. And he was like, just go get your nails done. Like, I'll just pay for it. Here, just take my card. And he just reached in his wallet and gave me his card. And I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? So he got my nails and my toes done for me. And by the time I got back to the house, he'd asked me if there was anything I needed him to help with as far as the move, because I was really paranoid about him coming to the house. And I was like, I got boxes everywhere. And he was like, I'm not coming to see the boxes. And you told me you were moving. I expect there would be boxes. But I told him, I was like, no, I got these armoires that are not going, but they need to be taken down. And then I had like some boxes that needed to go to Goodwill. I told you about that, how like I had a bunch of stuff that I wasn't taking with me. So by the time I got back, he had taken down the armoires, he'd taken the stuff to Goodwill, and he swept my floors. If you know me, you know my love language is acts of service. Like if you were going to be present in my life, please find ways to make my life easier. Like this is my love language. Keep me from stressing out. Help me, help you, help us. We ended up spending the day in Malibu. I wanted to get lunch by the water. And then we went up into the hills and went to Malibu Farms. And then we went to this like really sexy spot called Better Than Sex. We walked in and I was like, is this a swingers club? It's super sexy. It's like chandeliers and heavy dark curtains. It's only booths and it's set up so you sit next to each other instead of across from each other. It's a dessert bar. Everything is just very, very sexy. Like the descriptions of the drinks or the food. It sounds like you're reading pages from a romance novel. And it's like designed for people to like be able to like make out in public, but in private. They give you a lot of privacy and discretion. So I was like, I'm sure those waiters have seen all types of shit. So yeah, so that was my birthday. It was amazing. Totally low key, just like I wanted. He had asked me, he was like, so for your birthday, like, what are we doing? Are we doing Demetria? Are we doing Demi? Are we doing Belle? Because these are all three distinct personalities. He was like, which one of these personalities am I catering to? Because those are all different experiences. And I was like, no, Demetria is fine. And he was like, that's who I prefer. I was like, that's who you met first. It's good times. Next year, though, I'm going to do some over-the-top shit. I was, what is the guy's name? He's one of my favorites. Swanky Jerry. No swanky, no styling. From Young Famous African on Netflix. I love that dude. He's my favorite personality from that show, but I follow him on Instagram. Dude dresses his ass off. Like his life as curated, because I do understand that all Instagram accounts are curated. His curated life on Instagram is amazing. It's like watching a TV show. Like he is the TV show. I'm like, you're co-stars and everybody. I didn't dislike anybody on the show, but I was like, sir, you are the show. But he just had a birthday party. He's a fellow Cancer. Happy birthday to Swanky Jerry. Like I know this man. But he had an amazing birthday party. I think it was in Nigeria. But he had a dinner party for a bunch of his friends. Sexy. So sexy. And I was like, yo, next year, I should be somewhere on the continent of Africa. I'm doing big African energy, some real over-the-top sexy shit. And we in Ghana, we going to the Polo Club. We get in a private room. That'll be Ajwa. Ajwa is extra. That said, we have a gigantic treat for this episode. Actually, it's my friend, Will Jawando. He is a city council member in Montgomery County, Maryland. He's currently up for re-election. He is also the author of My 7 Black Fathers, a young activist memoir on race, family, and the mentors who made him whole. One of those mentors is Barack Obama. But I ran into Will and his amazing wife, Michelle. Remember about a month ago, Michelle Obama had done a big event in LA, When We All Vote. I ran into Will and Michelle, not First Lady Michelle, his wife Michelle, who totally has like Michelle Obama energy, by the way. But I ran into them at a fundraiser that weekend, and Will mentioned he had a book, and I loved the title of it. And I was like, oh my God, you have to come on the podcast. And he was like, I would totally come on the podcast. So today, he's on the podcast. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to my friend, Will Jawando. He's joined us to talk about his book, which I could not put down. If I had a book club, this would be our monthly select. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, those who don't identify as either, please welcome Will Jawando to Ratchet and Respectable. Am I pronouncing your last name right? I'm notorious for like butchering people's names.
You said it perfectly.
Perfectly. Wonderful. I am very happy to have you on Ratchet and Respectable.
I'm glad to be on. I love the title. I love you, and I'm just happy that I get to grace the stage with you.
Yay. You've been gracing a lot of stages lately because I saw you maybe like 3 weeks ago, like out here in LA. And then I was on your Instagram. I saw you just got back from Essence, like what, on Sunday?
Yeah, back on Sunday in time to march in 4th of July parades here back in Maryland. I've been all over the place.
That's right. And you're in the middle of an upcoming election. Today is the first day of early voting in Maryland.
Yes, July 7th through the 14th. It was moved by court order. First time we've ever had a July election here in the state of Maryland. But we know how important it is that we get out and vote, make our voices heard. Rights are not guaranteed. We've seen that in the last several weeks. So, yeah, making sure that we're getting people out to vote. And yes, I'm running for re-election to Montgomery County Council, which is the largest jurisdiction in Maryland. So exciting times.
Okay. Well, I wish I lived in Maryland and I wish I lived in Montgomery County. PG County people are going to hate me for saying that because I would vote for you.
I appreciate that.
How was Essence? This was the first year I didn't go, and I was like watching everyone online, and I was like, oh, I should have just gone. I usually work it.
I know. It had been a few years since I've been, and it was cool. It was really cool. You know my lovely wife, Michelle Jawando, and it was actually her first Essence. So it was the first time we had gone together. I had been a couple times before, and it was really special because I was able to do a book signing and a book talk about my 7 Black fathers, and I did a panel. This was the first year they had a men's vertical called the In His Zone, the men's experience. And it was the second floor of the convention center. You know how Essence is laid out. It had a barbershop and a bar there and pool tables and programming. It was really cool. And I did a great panel with my brother, Devon Franklin, called It Takes a Village. And we talked about, just our various perspectives of how to help our young people in the Black community and our various books. And it was just a great experience and really, really enjoyed it. And then, of course, saw Janet Jackson live in concert for the first time in my life. So, that was
amazing, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it was good. It was good to be with, you know how Essence is, and particularly coming out of COVID. Obviously, we're still dealing with it, but just to be with your people in a space where you're celebrating our culture is it's a special thing.
Yes. I'm so mad I missed it.
You come back. It'll be there next year.
I loved seeing the experience at the men's panel. Like I saw clips that you posted on your page of you and Devon Franklin, and then I was just going through other men who had attended and posted. And I think it's so important for men to commune, have conversation, be in conversation with one another, talk to and with one another, which is really the backbone, the underpinning of your book.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, before we jump into the book, I think it's so rare. Like, Black women, and I mentioned this at Essence, you guys are the cornerstone, the bedrock. You've been holding down our community, our families, in so many ways, our institutions, church and be way beyond that, our nonprofits and go down the list, our civil rights organizations. And I think, but also you all communicate better, like with each other and I think it's important that we're intentional about creating spaces for Black men and boys to be able to do that. And I think so. Kudos to Essence for doing that. But yes, you're right. I mean, the book is about relationships. It's about particularly these fatherhood relationships, these mentorship relationships that I was privileged to have, but that we all have in some form or capacity, some more than others, and how just powerful they are in the lives of Black men and boys in particular. They literally can save and change lives. And I think that's a story that we don't hear enough. And we undersell what is actually happening already in our.
Well, can I tell you, when you told me about the book, when I ran into to you and Michelle out here in LA, I've said for years that there are so many men who make a really good living or build major platforms off of giving advice to women and telling women what to do. Right. And I've always said, I was like, men, go talk to your boys. Like, leave women alone, go talk to each other. So when you were like, I'm talking to other men, I was like, well, let me highlight this because I want to support it because I've been complaining about it. So when I see somebody doing it, I want to support. I got a copy of the book and I said, let me read the first 50 pages just so I can have like an informed understanding of what this book is about. I cried reading the foreword.
Yeah.
You were talking about your friend, his name starts with a K.
Kalfani, yeah.
Yes, Kalfani. But you were talking about your friend and I cried reading the foreword. And it wasn't very long. You didn't have overly, it wasn't a very long story about him, but the way you captured him and your friendship and where your story went one way and his went another, it broke my heart.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I it breaks my heart almost daily. To be honest, when I think about Kalfani, I get emotional almost every time I talk about him because I met him in the fifth grade, as you've read, and he was the cool kid. He was popular. He was smart. He was the son of immigrants like me. He was the best basketball player at the school. I was everything the opposite of that. I was chubby and not popular and not coordinated, and he took me under his wing. And actually, when I was thinking about writing this book, I almost made him one of my 7 Black fathers because I think it's important to talk about peer mentorship too. But I chose to include him in the introduction because we really had really different paths.
No one likes waiting on a paycheck, especially when you've got bills due. Good thing there's Chime. Now you can get your paycheck up to 2 days early with direct deposit. That's up to 2 more days to save, pay bills, and generally just feel good about your money situation. What I love most about Chime is how convenient it is. In addition to getting you paid early, it's also an award-winning mobile app, checking account, debit card, and optional savings account. So what are you waiting for? Hopefully not your paycheck. Get started with Chime today. Applying for a free account takes less than 2 minutes. Get started at chime.com/ratchet. That's chime.com/ratchet. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank North America, members FDIC. Early access to direct deposit funds depends on payer.
And I have no doubt that if he had these men, the 7 Black fathers that I had, and many others, women included, and many other mentors, that I think he would still be alive today. He loses his life when we're exiting high school. I talk about this distinction of him being a decision kid versus me being a destination kid. When the bell rings at 3:00, I had a place to go. My destination was my mom's job, my de facto after school program, where I actually encounter 3 of my 7 Black fathers, my stepfather and 2 of my mother's coworkers, Jay Fletcher and Dean Samwuya. And Kalfani is a decision kid. His mom works 2 jobs. His dad's not in the picture. Every day after school, he decides where he's going to go. Some days it's the basketball court. Some days he goes with me, but many days he goes to his neighborhood and gets involved with people and ends up dealing drugs and loses his life in that life. And I just think about him often. And and all of us have a story like that. All of us know people in our past that have had those divergent paths. And I really believe that if he had access to these father figures, these mentors, that he would still be here. And it's something I think about all the time.
It's still in the foreword. You ran some statistics about how I think it's only like 1% of Black boys, like all things considered, like I guess you were saying like the social and economic and financial and neighborhood, all of those things don't as much matter as whether you have like a Black mentor in your house. Otherwise, it's, I guess, only 1% of Black boys is on par with like where 1% of like your average white kid is.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's one of the things that helped me frame the book. There's this study that was done by researchers at Harvard and Stanford and the IRS and the Census Bureau, came out a few years ago, and it looked at the 20 million children born between 1978 and 1983, and I'm in that zone. And it looked at where did they live through the census information, what was the construction of the families, 2-parent, 1-parent, level of education, all the things you learn from the census, and many of the things that are used as excuses to talk about why people have different outcomes. And then it looked at their IRS data of their parents. What were they making? Where did they fall in the income quartiles? And then it looked 40 years later, 35, 40 years later, where are these kids in now, these 20 million children that were born in the U.S. during that time? And it showed some really interesting things and devastating things. And one of the things it showed that for Black boys and white boys who were born in the same neighborhoods with the same income, with the same family structure, same level of education, all the things we hear that are excuses about why there's disparate outcomes, when you controlled for all of that, these Black boys and white boys from similar circumstances had wide earnings gaps 35, 40 years later. And that was true in 99% of zip codes in the United States, 99%. There were these 1% zip codes, these black boy safe zones, where black boys and white boys from the same background are doing similarly well 35, 40 years later, which we would want to see, right? If you're given similar opportunity. There was also another thing in this study that showed that if you're a millionaire and you're a black child and born to a family that is earning over $1 million a year, that you have a 50% chance of falling to the bottom quartile of earnings. It's a flip of a coin if you're a black millionaire that you're going to drop into poverty. And if you're a white child, 90% chance you stay a millionaire or more. Just devastating information, kind of confirming what we already knew, that opportunity is not equal and race does matter. But I grew up adjacent to one of these 1% zip codes, downtown Silver Spring, 20910, where my mother worked and where I met 3 of my 7 black fathers, and where statistically significant difference of these zip codes is they had a higher percentage of working class black fathers in them. And so I literally benefited from being closer to these men and having the chance to have more of these relationships. Now, they're happening all across the country in the 99%, of course, but we need to enable more of them. And that's one of kind of the underpinnings of the book.
Yeah, so it's like, if ever you question the importance of black fathers, which people should stop doing, by the way, but if ever there was a question, like, this absolutely confirms it. Like, you are necessary, you are needed. It's so very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But also, the other thing I'm trying to do here is expand that definition, right?
Yes.
I don't have 7 biological fathers. I have one from whom I have really no relationship for much of my life, early life. And creates the void and the need for these other fathers, these other men, one of being my stepfather, 2 of my mom's coworkers, my Mr. Williams, my only black male teacher that I have in 4th grade. They fathered me too. And I think that's the other thing I'm hoping to do here, is to expand that definition, because we all have a role to play in fathering and mothering and mentoring and helping our children develop.
Yes, and I think that part that you said about not being the biological father, but being a father figure in some way is so important. Can we talk about Joseph?
Sure.
Oh my God, I cried again. And look, I'm a Cancer. I cry all the time, but like, I had boohoo moments reading about Joseph. You talk about, I guess, you're not even, I guess, your parents had split up, and then Joseph came into the picture, and you thought, because your father left, that Joseph, who was your mother's second husband, so your stepfather, you thought that he would leave as well. And then there's a moment where, like, that all comes together. Can you tell that story to us, where Joseph sort of pours into you and says, I am not leaving you?
Yeah. Joseph is, the way the book is organized is it's introduction or forward, as you said, and 7 chapters. And each of my 7 black fathers is 1 chapter. And Joseph Jacob, my stepfather, who I meet just after my parents' divorce when I'm 6 years old, he is the printer at my mom's new job, where she's the production manager, where it's a newsletter publishing company where they outside of DC, where people write about various topics, and my mom puts the artwork together and Joseph prints it. And so they have a working relationship, and that's how they meet. And they end up getting together, and he comes into my life at a really critical time, where I have described, as you've read, my father I describe him in the book, my biological father, as an absent presence. He's in the house until I'm 6, but there's no relationship. I'm yearning for him to engage with me, and he doesn't. And I find out later, there's many reasons why: his depression, his dissatisfaction with his own life. But for me as a young child, I'm just yearning for that attention. And Joseph is the first black man, someone who looks like me, who gives me that attention. And it's overwhelming at first. I actually struggle to try to figure out what it is or why it's being directed at me at first. And I'm angry about that it's not coming from my dad. And, some of the similar things that I think a lot of children of divorced parents go through as transition. But I think it's made even deeper because of my yearning for connection to my dad. And he gives me a very practical, present love, and is dependent, and is always asking me about my day and showing me how to do things, and just loving my mother. And I'm watching all this happen. And eventually, the callousness that had just started to develop in me, of which is something I see now, and is something I hope that this book can help identify and, remediate in some ways for people who are able to read it or be exposed to it, is this hardening that happens for so many of our young Black boys who haven't been shown love, and or who are told that they're not worthy of love by this society. And Joseph catches me before I fall into that, and is just dogged. And we have this really emotional scene that, you probably, that you're talking about, you cried about, and where I'm like, well, you're going to leave me too. And, just like my dad, and, you're not going to be any different. And he just really tells me very calmly, I'm never leaving. I love you. I love your mother. And, it's just a transformational moment, and it breaks through. And it gives me the capacity to accept the relationships that I would later have with these other Black men. I think that's another key point, is that these are two-way street relationships. You can't, they don't go just one way. You have to be open to them. And for many of our Black children, particularly our Black boys, that's the first step, is being open to having these relationships.
I'm crying again listening to you retell the story. I'm so emotional. When you run a business, time seems more precious. Every misplaced moment feels like a missed opportunity, a lost chance to make your business better, or even just step away and recharge. ShipStation gives e-commerce sellers like you and me more time to do what they really love. Unless what you really love is managing every single little detail of order fulfillment. ShipStation automates time-intensive shipping processes so you can get back to focusing on bigger things, like developing new products, honing your marketing strategy, or interacting with customers. I've used ShipStation from the very beginning, from day one of launching my online business. So I let ShipStation handle all my shipping and handling so I can get back to what I'm really good at, growing my business. ShipStation works for all storefronts, Amazon, eBay, Etsy, or like me, Squarespace, and it lets you automate all the manual work that goes into shipping. It's time to let go of all those shipping tasks. ShipStation can do it better and faster. Sign up using promo code RESPECT for a free 60-day trial today at ShipStation.com and start saving with every shipment. That's 2 whole months of shipping made quick and painless, and it's free to try. Just go to ShipStation.com, click on the microphone at the top of the page, and type in RESPECT. ShipStation. Make ship happen. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple, which I love. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in just one tap. See? Simple. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions, so you don't have to. I love Truebill. It's so easy to use and it saves me money. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/ratchet. Go right now. Truebill.com/ratchet. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/ratchet. Mr. Williams, and he's your 4th grade teacher. He's a Black 4th grade teacher. And what stood out to me so much, even the very beginning of the story when I started reading, I was like, I never had a Black male teacher.
Wow. Yeah.
I never had a Black male teacher. I never had a Black male college professor.
Wow.
Grew up in PG County, which is predominantly Black. Never.
Well, you're not alone, Demetria. You're not alone. I mean, Black male teachers are literally unicorns. They're only 2% of the teaching profession. I talk about this in the book. And it is one of the ways that I think, I'm a council member, I'm a lawyer, and, there's a call to action in this book. One of them is that we need to recruit, train, support more Black male teachers as a policy goal and objective. because, Mr. Williams, I meet in the fourth grade. I'm at a new school. And he's the first and only black male teacher I would have. He's the first black man I see wear a shirt and tie every day, and he ends up giving me my first tie and teaching me how to tie it. I look in the mirror today and tie my tie before I go to work. I think of Mr. Williams. I only knew him 9 months. At the time, I never knew his first name. I didn't learn it until I researched him 35 years later in preparation to write this book. He passed away in 2019, so I just missed him. But I was able to get in contact with his children and his grandchildren to learn more about his life outside of the classroom. And he was just an amazing person. He helped me deal with bullying. He was the first person I saw code switch. I see him talking to a janitor in the hallway after school and using slang, and I'm like, Mr. Williams, you use slang? And he didn't know it, but he was showing me it was okay to be more than one thing. And so he was just transformational, not just for me, but for everyone in our class. He helped us work together. He taught us math. I mean, math was my favorite subject from that point on. He just had a transformational impact. And I think it's one of the things that is a through line through the book is that all these relationships are different. They're all different durations in time. But they can be transformational no matter the size, shape, or duration of the relationship. It's just we need to have them.
The duration part stuck out to me because you say early on that, I only knew him as, my teacher for fourth grade. And I think sometimes when we talk about being a mentor to someone or being a father figure of some sort to someone, you think of it as like a lifelong endeavor or a years-long endeavor at least, but literally just being present for a short period of time when someone is just in need makes a huge difference as, you remember your fourth grade teacher.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we were talking about when I was just at Essence, imagine if every black man and woman and everyone in our community saw it as their job to have mentoring moments, mothering, fathering moments with black children. They see them on the street. They give them an encouraging word. They're interacting with them wherever they see them. Imagine the aggregate power of that. And even if it was just a moment, and of course it won't be just a moment because some relationships will form, some will be longer. And I know Joseph he's my stepfather, he's my father. He's still in my life. That's been a lifelong relationship, but not all of these were that. And I just think that there's power in that. In fact, when I had my, the first book event at Politics and Prose here in DC, 3 of my 7 black fathers were there. It was emotional. You'd have been crying too there. I had Joseph J. Fletcher and Wayne Holmes. And one of the things they remarked, which just, was stunning to me and to, I think, many in the audience, is that they both said to Jay and Wayne that they didn't know the impact they were having on me. They didn't realize it. And I think when you think about that, that's just powerful in and of itself. I'm writing a book about these men. They didn't even know that they had this impact on me. And imagine the impact we could all have if we just took the time, however short, however long, to engage.
Yeah. I want to talk about 2 more. And all of the men that you describe in this book are super, super important. I wish we had the bandwidth to get to all of them.
I know.
But I definitely want to talk about Barack Obama.
Sure.
Yeah, because that's one of them. I know people are going to be like, wait, what? Like, he's a father figure? What?
Yeah, so I meet Barack Obama when I'm 25. Another thing I think is important here is that we have a lifelong need for fathering, for mentoring. It does not go away. And he's really critical in my development as a husband and a father. I meet him. I make it my mission to seek him out after I see him speak at 2004 convention speech in Boston that put him on the map as he's being elected to the United States Senate. And I'm working for Nancy Pelosi at the time. And I walk across the Capitol and introduce myself and give my resume for every once a week for about 6 months until someone meets with me. And so I sought out this mentorship relationship, which I think is another point. Sometimes you got to go after it.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentored me. He fathered me before I even met him. I think, another thing is how I'm very cognizant about how I carry myself, what I say in public as a public official. For some, you can get mentored, you can get fathered through YouTube, through people you see and model. And we need physical relationships, but I think we need to expand the definition. But I get to work for him in the Senate, in the White House, end up getting to spend my first Father's Day with him playing basketball. He helps me reclaim my love of basketball. I tell that story in the book, about I played in college and had a horrible coach. And so, yeah, he's really important in that aspect. I get married, have 2 of my 4 children while I'm working for him in the Senate, in the White House. And he really helps me in the small moments, but also by his example of, how to be a present father, how to make sure I'm being a helpful and contributing husband. And, it was invaluable information that I in a relationship that I still treasure to this day.
2 things about that story stand out to me. One, how accessible Obama used to be if you were in DC at that time.
Uh-huh.
Like he would be at CBC and you could just literally just walk right up to him and be like, "Hey, how are you?" Like, "Oh, you're running for office." Like, "I hope you win. I'm going to vote for you." Walk right up to him. Security wouldn't even stop you. It was ridiculous. Try that now. That wouldn't go so well. Not for me.
No,
Maybe for you.
not at all. Not at all. I remember walking with him and, just going to lunch, like in DC, like, walking around Capitol Hill. It's like crazy how things change.
But no, the importance, I think, that you were saying of just sort of being able to watch someone from a distance and how they carry themselves, and also seeing their consistency.
Yes.
One of the things that stood out to me just throughout the stories that I read in your book is so much of what you picked up on wasn't always conversations that were had or things that were said. It was watching what people did.
Absolutely. I mean, that's such an important point, Demetria, that one that I haven't really articulated the way you did. But I think of Dean Samuelia, for example, who is the IT manager at my mom's job, who's the Nigerian, who ends up taking me to Nigeria for the first time and helping me connect to that part of my heritage. Because what I lost with the lack of relationship from my dad was not only a relationship with my biological father, it was also access to that side of my heritage, and which I was yearning for. And he helps reconnect me. But he has what I call in the book this Nigerian hustle, right? No one hustles like a Nigerian,
Yes.
And he has it. He's an entrepreneur and he's got jobs. He works in IT, but he's also working overseas. And we never talked about it. I saw it, and I demonstrated in my life now. I attribute my stick-to-itiveness, my go-get-'em attitude in part to Dean. Like you said, that was an observed behavior. It wasn't necessarily discussed.
Yeah, I picked up on it when you were talking about how people would refer to your stepfather as Mr. Your friends especially would refer to your stepfather as Mr. Jawando, and he didn't correct them.
Yes.
And you were like, he was just secure in who he was, so it wasn't necessary for him like, I am not, I am so and so, and he was just like, okay, sure, I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. And I think humility, being confident in who you are, all those things that are embedded in how he responded there are observed behaviors. I mean, you always hear the old adage, like 90% of communication is nonverbal, right? And I think that's even more so in a mentorship, fathering, mothering relationship. As a child, you're a sponge. You're soaking up everything, and you are literally learning how to be. And that's why it's so critical that, especially for our community, where hundreds of years have been intentionally dedicated to telling us that we're not something, or that we're less than, or that we are something, that we should aspire to be anything than who we are. It's so important that we give models and examples of of the greatness of our people and who we can be. And that's why everyone has a role to play, both individually and personally, but also from a policy and program point of view as well.
Point of view as well. Can we talk about your dad?
Yeah.
I did not get to his portion in the book. I was trying
Well,
to.
you're going to be crying. Don't I tell you
I'm
that.
crying throughout this whole book. I'm going to be dehydrated at the end of this book. It's your fault. From what I read, you reconnected with your father toward the end of his life. Is that accurate? And you helped
Correct.
him when he was ill. You took care of him while he was sick.
Yeah, we start reconnecting. I mentioned Dean takes me to Nigeria. It's my first time going. My father had not been back in 30 years. And so question number one, when I'm meeting with all of my family and my uncle lives there and he's taking me around, is where's your dad?
Mm-hmm.
And it puts kind of like what I call this good familial West African pressure on my dad to go back. And, I find out, so we take a trip, really a transformational trip together to Nigeria 2 years after I go for the first time. And Michelle is actually on this trip. She's my girlfriend at the time. And I was moved to ask her to go with me because I knew she was going to be more than my girlfriend, whether she knew it or not.
Hold on,
And,
question. When did you know?
I knew pretty early with Michelle. We meet in July. All this is happening at the same time, by the way. So I meet her in July of 2004, you know, literally right around the time Barack Obama is giving his speech at the convention, and all that's happening, and I'm getting ready to go to law school, and I'm in law school, and she's heading to her third year in law school at Carolina. So I meet her in July 04. I take this trip with my father in December 04. So it's within 6 months of meeting, and I probably knew by the end of the summer that she was the right person.
Like I be telling folks, interested men act interested, and they know when they know, and it don't take all year. I'm sorry, detour.
No, that's a whole nother conversation, but we should have that one too, but yeah, I agree with you. It's whether you're scared of knowing or you think you're missing out or whatever, and I didn't have that, here I am, 18 years later. So
exactly. But I'm sorry, you went back to Nigeria with your dad and Michelle. Okay.
With my dad and Michelle, for his first time in 30 years, we take this, really emotional trip. We visit the house he grew up in. His parents are buried in the backyard. He hasn't visited the grave since his mother died, which, I talk about that in the trip. That side of my family is Muslim, so they have to be buried within 48 hours. His mom dies when I'm 14. We don't make the trip because we can't afford it. I'm very angry with him about that for a long time. And so we take this emotional trip, and we're both like I'm seeing my grandmother, he's seeing his mother and his father in their grave and behind the house. They bury them in the house, behind the house where he grew up. It's very emotional. And we meet all this family and reconnect. And I learn more about him on the trip. I see a different side of him. I see him not depressed. I see him not angry. I see him jovial. I learned stories that I never knew. And I understand a little bit about what the United States had done to him, and I think it's not uncommon for a lot of immigrants, but a lot of Black people in general. It had beat him down in a way, and he had not lived up to the expectations that he had for himself. And that impacted his relationship with his wife and with his child. And I started to have the capacity, because I had been receiving this love from Joseph and Jay and Wayne and Dean at this point, and Barack Obama. I had the capacity to forgive, and that starts the kind of reconciliation. And that was in 2004. My dad passes away in 2017. But we have 13 years of kind of really a rebuilding and doing a lot together. And he gets to be a great grandfather to his 3 granddaughters. He doesn't meet his grandson, unfortunately, but their relationship with him, Babagba is what they call him, which is Yoruba for grandfather. They have a very fond memory of him. And I think that is something I'm just really thankful for. And it kind of culminates with me taking care of him when he gets diagnosed with cancer in 2011. It progresses, and he ends up not being able to walk, but he lives with us the last 3.5 years of his life, and is very engaged, and we take care of him as he transitions. And it was difficult, wish we had more time, but I'm thankful that we were able to reconnect and end in a much better place. So I tell that story, and we have a lot of conversations, and that's really the last chapter, which I think is universal too. How many of us have issues with parents or loved ones and we don't reconcile? This is part of that story.
Yeah, because from where the book begins, I would never expect that would be how your relationship with him turned out. My grandmother, who's also passed away, she would often say, just keep living. So many wild and crazy and unexpected things can happen. Relationships are repaired. People come back into your life. People leave your life. You reach heights that you never knew. Some people you grew up with, like your friend, you guys went in different directions, but just keep living. Just so many crazy things can happen. Unexpected things, I should say, can happen.
Absolutely.
I love that you went back to Nigeria with your dad. I think everyone who they have a living parent and they're able to travel back home with them and see like who their parents were before they became, mom and dad. Mm-hmm. I got the opportunity to do that with my mom going back to Detroit, and then also my dad going back to the country in Mississippi. And I see my parents in an entirely different light now.
Yeah, you appreciate who they were, where they came from, how they became who they are.
Yeah, how they became, especially.
As I said, like the capacity to understand, to empathize, to relate, and ultimately, forgive. We all get mad at our parents and loved ones. The people that are closest to us, we get mad at the easiest. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's exactly right. Understanding them a little more deeply. That's one of the things I so love about this book. I think, like all these men have an impact, but I think, I'm proud of the legacy it leaves for my children and my children's children, hopefully one day, and just others, so that they understand more about their family, but particularly their grandfather, my father, about who he was and his struggles, but also, his triumphs as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, like I don't have a book club, and I keep saying, like, every time I read like a book that I'm super, super engrossed in, I'm like, I wish I had a book club because this would be in it. If I had a book club, this would be a pick. I can't put your book down. When I finish this interview with you, instead of editing it, I'm going to go finish reading your book. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Well, thank you for sharing. Maybe that's another one of your business ventures, a book club down the line.
A book club from Ghana. What is my life right now?
It's amazing.
It's amazing. It actually is. It's amazing. But yes, thank you so much for speaking with me today, and congratulations on your book, and congratulations in advance on winning re-election on the 19th. I'm speaking it into existence for you.
Amen.
Yes.
I receive it. And thank you so much for featuring it. And thank you for all you do to lift up both the Ratchet and Respectable in our community.
Everybody needs representation. Everybody needs a voice. Give my love to Michelle and the kids, please, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Demetria.
I adore him and his book. I can't wait to finish it. I didn't have a chance to read the whole thing because I was prepping for this move, but I can't wait. Like, it's riveting. I wasn't just blowing smoke when I told him that I kept crying. It's a really well-written book. It really sucks you into, about to say the characters. They're not characters, they're real people, but it really sucks you into the stories. He's very, very vulnerable and transparent in a way that we're not always used to men being. It's very, very beautiful and impactful. So please pick up a copy of Will's book, My 7 Black Fathers. And if you live in Montgomery County and you have not early voted, make sure you make it to the polls by the 19th. Okay? So that is our episode for today. As I told you last week, we're not going to have a new episode on Friday. I'm moving on Friday with the 5 hours to get home plus the time difference. It's a lot. So we will speak again next week. Okay, talk soon. Bye.